Hi, so today I would like to talk about the classes in Mass Effect 1 and try to rank them, try to talk about how fun they are, how effective they are, and maybe if you're watching this without ever playing the Mass Effect games, help you make a pick for your first playthrough of each specific game. I'm gonna try and rank them based on the game they're on, because the classes are going to behave somewhat differently based on each installment of Mass Effect. So we'll try to go through Mass Effect 1, then Mass Effect 2, then Mass Effect 3. Uh, well, I think there's no point in stalling, might as well just get into it. And starting off, the first class that you see on your little pick screen is gonna be Soldier. Soldier Boy, the first class in the lineup and the class that apparently the vast majority of the player base plays as. I think like it's 60 or 50%, something crazy like that. And a very interesting class as well, because you're really kind of not speccing into any abilities at all. You're basically going gung-ho with guns. And your guns are gonna be your abilities essentially. You have all the skills for all the guns in Mass Effect 1. So you have the pistol marksmanship, you have the little rocket shot from your shotgun, you have the assault rifle mega fire thing and the assassination perk for assault rifles, as well as combat armor, which is quite good. And I think it's fitness or something that you get. Yeah, you get fitness, I'm pretty sure. As well as, quite importantly, access to heavy armor. You are the only class in the game that will have access to an entire class of armor. When you play as a soldier, your entire gimmick is going to be around juggling your guns, or at least picking one or two guns that you really prefer to play with, like assault rifles and sniper rifles, and just basically is utilizing them as much as possible. Adapting yourself to situations based specifically on, well, whatever range is of your weapon that you currently prefer. For example, long range you're going to be fighting sniper rifles, close range you're going to be using assault rifles and shotguns, and pistols are really going to be only for emergencies, I suppose. They're really not that you're really not going to use pistols that much if you're playing soldier. Soldier also is the only class with access to assault rifles in particular. This is kind of different for Legendary Edition, where technically all the classes can use all the weapons. It's just that you don't get the specializations in all the weapons. For example, if you're playing as an infiltrator, you do get a sniper rifle specialization, so you can bump up your sniper rifle damage. But as you progress through the game, you realize that all the other guns are falling behind, and while you can take them out and use them relatively efficiently, they're gonna be really falling behind and you're gonna be sticking to sniper rifles. Soldier doesn't have that. You have access to all of them, you're gonna be using all of them, except for pistols again, but yeah. Because of this, I think Soldier is decently effective. Again, thanks due to armor and guns being really a solution for every problem in the game. There's no combat encounter at all that cannot be solved by just shooting enough. And considering how many abilities you have for the guns, you're gonna be absolutely devastating everything and surviving a lot. And also, in Mass Effect 1, Soldier has a class talent that allows them to regenerate health. It's basically working as an upgrade, like the medical interface or whatever it's called, that you put on your armor that allows you to regen health. It's very cool. But it's not particularly useful. It's very slow. It's like 3 to 5 health a second. Really, you don't want to rely on it as much. But it's quite a cool class. It's been a while since I've played Soldier in particular, but it's been a fun time, considering you don't get locked out of any equipment. One downside, a very very big downside, especially at the start of the game, is that you do not have access to decryption or electronics. And that means that you can't unlock any doors or containers with it. and that's gonna be your primary source of equipment aside from shops. And at first, at the start of the game, you're not gonna have a lot of money, and if you don't find loot and containers, you're gonna have even less equipment than money until you get tally. Once you get tally, you can just unlock both the skills. I think Garrus also has them. I'm not sure. Yeah, I think basically you're gonna have to be relying on your companions to do the electronic skills for you, and you're gonna have a companion who has a very high level in decryption and electronics skill at all times, just so you don't miss out on the juicy loot, because you're gonna need a lot of guns, you're gonna need a lot of upgrades for those guns, and heavy armor is gonna be the most expensive class of armor as well. Although money in Mass Effect is not really that big of a deal, unless you're buying the X tier Spectre gear, then it's important. Other than that, not really so. Well, let's get to the tiering. I think Soldier is the only class that fully lets you experience Mass Effect 1's arsenal, play around with the guns as much as possible with like the most efficiency. But it's also generally considered to be a boring class because you never really utilize all the abilities and combos and all the various little cool things that the game has to offer, although that's a little untrue because your companions can still do it. I would put the Soldier at A tier personally, because really all the things in Mass Effect 1 that other classes can do, Soldier can just deal with just fine. You know what, actually S tier. Just out of pure efficiency, Soldier is really a jack of all trades and simultaneously seemingly a master of all of them, because all the downsides of yours can be supplemented by taking the right companion into the battle. And that's it. And you're a devastating machine other than that. Alright, that's about it for Soldier for Mass Effect 1. Let's move on to the next one. I think we'll talk about Infiltrator. Infiltrator. A class that's specifically specialized in sniper rifles. A class that my latest playthrough was on, so I'm quite familiar with it. You have a lot going on as an infiltrator. It's really, I think, in my opinion, spoiler alert, the best class in the game. I'm just gonna put you at S tier, right below, right up above Soldier. And the reason for that's quite simple. Sniper rifles, in my opinion, are the most busted weapon in the entire Mass Effect franchise. That 1, 2, 3 doesn't matter. They're absolutely ridiculous as long as you can aim, and aiming is not that hard considering you get the slowdown effect. They deal a fuck ton of damage, and you know, your specific class can do even more damage with sniper rifles. You have both electronics and decryption, so immediately from the start of the game you can start racking up the points in those categories and not have to bring a technician with you on all missions. You have fitness, you have access to medium armor, which is pretty damn good. You don't get locked into light armor. You have, I believe, damping, which is not that great of a skill, but it's a cool additional thing to soften up enemies and prevent them from dealing damage. Really, it's kind of like you take the meat of the best things Soldier has to offer, that being sniper rifles and decent armor and fitness, and then you add electronics and decryption on top of that, and you can start earning mad money with Infiltrator very early in the game, which is very, very good. I believe your talent allows you to reduce heat buildup on pistols and sniper rifles, which is also very good. Heat is literally your ammunition and how much you can shoot, and if you can shoot a lot with extremely powerful shots, you're gonna be wrecking enemies. And by the way, I forgot to mention that this tier list specifically is gonna orient on the Insanity difficulty. It's gonna be important to mention because really on difficulties below Insanity and Hardcore, you can do anything. You can get away with any class perfectly fine, no issues at all. and just blast through the game mostly. Mass Effect 1 in particular is not really that complex of a game, not that difficult, but some classes are gonna be much easier to play compared to others, and we'll get to that. Okay, that's out of the way. Infiltrator is probably my personal favorite in Mass Effect 1 because of all these things. Sniper rifles are just great, basically any situation. And well, that's about it for the Infiltrator. There's not much to talk about other than that. Alright, let's get to the next one. Sentinel. What a fascinating class. The game says that you're supposed to be supporting your companions and squad mates with abilities, and it's sort of true, but really it's really about you speccing into as many abilities as possible, is in a absolutely wide range without going all the way into either of them. That means you're half biotic, half tech, but you know, you're a master of none. You don't get the very special abilities that come with the full spec of engineer, that being AI hacking. You don't get AI hacking, and you don't get the best adept abilities either, that being, well, actually you do get very good abilities, but you don't get singularity, you don't get warp, you just have to deal with throw and lift, and those are usually enough, but still you don't have singularity, and that's kind of a big deal. Well, biotics in Mass Effect 1 are busted. They're fucking unbelievable, and the reason for that is quite simple. It does not matter if the enemy has shields or armor. Actually, there's no armor in Mass Effect 1. You can use biotics on any enemy that's not flying and not a boss, that being Saren, and just absolutely shred shit, because throw is gonna incapacitate your enemy, lift is gonna incapacitate your enemy. On a lot of environments, lift and throw combined can just insta-kill your enemy because you throw them out of the map. I think that personally, biotics are a little bit maybe too busted in Mass Effect 1, and that kind of makes them boring to play, especially considering you don't have cooldowns on all your abilities at once. Once you use one ability, you have individual cooldowns, so you can self-combo. You don't need to rely on your squad mates to follow up. You can just lift, then throw, lift, then throw, lift, then throw, and you're gonna be doing that to the entire game. Because you don't have guns. Well, that's a bit of a lie. You do have guns, you have pistols. You can't even properly spec into pistols. You have only the first level of the marksmanship skill for pistols, and that's it. That's all you get. You are completely and utterly reliant on your abilities through the game. And that works in Mass Effect 1 in my opinion. It's a little difficult. You have to kind of know what you're doing. You have to have really good pistol aim. Generally a good understanding of how the game works. It's not really recommended for a first playthrough. It's a very difficult but very different class to play, especially in the first game. Well, actually it's going to be even more interesting later down the line, but in the first game it's more manageable. You do get decryption and electronics from the start of the game, so that's very cool. And your special skill is neural shock, which is like AI hacking. Well, actually no, it's not. It's immediate incapacitation of any organic enemy. And you do have a lot of organic enemies. It's difficult to say whether there's more synthetic or organic enemies. If you're just going through the main story, you're definitely gonna be fighting a lot more synthetics, but also a lot of them are gonna be fought on the Mako, so you don't really interact that much. It's really gonna depend on the situation. Some missions don't have any synthetics, some missions don't have any organics, and you're gonna not really struggle on either of them, but you're gonna be a little bit more efficient against organics with the neural shock. It's very useful. That's about it for Sentinel. Really not a recommended class for a first playthrough. Very unique, but not a very efficient one. Well, actually, decently efficient thanks to the biotic abilities, but overall the lack of guns, you really feel it. I would put it onto B tier and let it stay there. It's been one of the most difficult playthroughs on Insanity by far. Let's go to the next one. This is, I believe, Vanguard. Vanguard, my beloved. Vanguard is a mix of combat abilities and biotics. You get specialization in shotguns, you get medium armor, and you get throw, lift, and warp, as well as barrier, which are all going to be very important abilities for you. Vanguard, in all the Mass Effect games, not so much in 1, but in the later ones for sure, is a very, very, very close quarters class. Should be pretty obvious from the shotgun skill, and generally your modus operandi is gonna be use biotics to incapacitate, throw barrier on yourself to survive, run in, shotgun shit down. It's incredibly active, it's incredibly close-paced, close-ranged, very fast-paced. You're gonna be on the move all the time to make the most use out of your shotgun. It's incredibly fun, even in Mass Effect 1, but it can be difficult sometimes because, again, getting close means enemies are gonna be aggroed at you and they're gonna be shooting at you a lot. Your medium armor and barrier do help, but again, we're talking about Insanity here. It can turn very sour very quickly. You don't have the luxury of staying behind and taking pot shots like Infiltrator. You have to get in there. But that's also what makes it fun. It's a very, very fun class. It's unbelievably engaging. Every combat encounter, you have to just hold W, get up close and personal, actually engage and use your abilities cleverly, watch your cooldowns, watch your health. Shotguns also have a cool effect of knocking enemies down a lot of the time. They have a lot of weapon force to them. It's very, very fun. And it's gonna ramp up significantly in the next games. But in Mass Effect 1, it's just really a class that makes you get up close and personal. Biotics make it OP, of course. And overall, I think I would put it onto A tier, actually. Yeah, A tier, because it's a little bit more difficult to play as Vanguard. Again, because you have to get up close, you're gonna be taking a lot of damage on Insanity. But it's just so fun. It's just so fun to run around with the shotgun and blast people away. It's unbelievable. Next up, Adept. Adept goes into S tier. Biotics are just crazy in Mass Effect 1. They're unbelievable. Biotics can just solve almost any situation in the game. You have just every biotic ability in the game. You have throw, you have lift, you have warp, you have singularity, you have barrier, you have stasis. Stasis is not really that great, but it can be situationally useful in Insanity. Overall though, you're gonna be relying on your other main abilities. Singularity is nuts. It's like lift, but for an entire group of enemies. It's crazy. You're gonna be wrecking shit with Adept. It becomes less useful in the later games, but in Mass Effect 1 it's just broken. You don't even need the armor skill, you don't even need the what should we call it, the weapon skills that much. You just blast through everything with biotics. You keep throwing and throwing and throwing and throwing. Your specialization gives you an reduced recharge time on biotic talents, as if you weren't busted enough. I don't think it's the most fun class to play, because again, you're just gonna be biotics, throw, 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 lift, 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 singularity, singularity, the entire game. But it's just unbelievably efficient. If you're struggling to complete a run in Mass Effect with any other class, then Adept might be your choice. Or if you're unsure whether you'll succeed, pick Adept, spam your biotics. That's all there is to it, really. Okay, that's all for Adept in Mass Effect 1. Let's go through the last class, and that's Engineer. Dear God, poor Engineer. You are the weakest class in the game if you pick engineer. I think, let me check, according to the Mass Effect survey stats, or not, the infographic, engineer is the lowest picked class at 5%, and it makes perfect sense. It's just so difficult to play as engineer. You don't have any cool biotics of Sentinel. You don't have any cool guns of Infiltrator, Soldier, or Vanguard. You lack, well, obviously you're a completely tech-based character, and tech is not that great of a specialization in Mass Effect 1. The only reason you need tech is for AI hacking, maybe, once you fight Geth, and for the electronic skills, which again your squad mates can supplement after the first act of the game. It's really, after you get Tally, the only thing you can really provide for your team is hacking. And again, Tally can do it as well. On missions with organics, you just can't be useful. You can break shields. Okay, you broke the shields. You can use decryption a little bit. I think engineer actually also gets neural shock. I was a little bit wrong with the previous comment I made about what should it call it? Sentinel being the only class that gets the medicine skill. No, I was wrong. You also get it for engineer. It's very difficult. You only get the pistol skill, and you don't get any heavy armor. You don't get any medium armor. It's weak. It's not a great class. It's by far, I think, the weakest class in the game. I would put it into D tier. You're outclassed by your own companions in the shit that you do. You're basically cosplaying as Tally. You really do not need to play engineer. In Mass Effect 1, it's a useless class. Pick. It's not fun, it's very difficult. On Insanity, you're gonna struggle a lot. Okay, that was the tier list for Mass Effect 1's classes. Let's move on to Mass Effect 2. Alright, let me just put all those back into place and we can move on and talk about them all over again, but this time for Mass Effect 2. We'll begin again with the Soldier class. There he is. You are again a pure combat specialist, and you are weird in Mass Effect 2. Well, actually, you are both weird and heavily privileged in Mass Effect 2. If in Mass Effect 1 you could technically equip a weapon and use it even if it wasn't of your class, and in Legendary Edition even more so, in Mass Effect 2 you cannot equip any other weapon unless you have the specialty for it. It's physically impossible until you go through like half the game and get a specialization later down the line. It's extremely difficult to play without extra guns. And Soldier just has access to all of them right off the bat. And then through the collectorship mission, you get an extra specialization, and you can pick an extra special cool gun for any of the preferred weapon type you have. It's fucking crazy. You really are the only class in the game that does not struggle with ammo. You have assault rifles, you have heavy pistols, you have shotguns, you have sniper rifles, you have everything you need, and Mass Effect 2 is so stingy on ammo sometimes. And we'll get to the more severe examples of this. But really, having 5 weapon types, including SMGs as well, it's unbelievable. It's super good. The abilities you have are weird though. Mass Effect 2 added ammo types. That's, Disruptor, Warp Ammo, Incendiary, whatever. And you have access to 3 of them at once. You have Disruptor, you have Incendiary, you have Cryo Ammo. Here's the problem with that. It's so boring and annoying to switch to ammunition types in the middle of a fight. It's so annoying. I guess you can technically apply different ammo types to different weapons, sure, but still, you don't want to sit around and like, oh shit, this guy has armor. Let me turn off my disruptor, put on incendiary. It's a little bit annoying. You just want to shoot shit and deal with things. It's nice having options though. Cryo ammo is, in my opinion, useless on insanity. You are never going to see. Sorry. You are never going to see enemies that have only health bars. All the enemies have armor, shields, or barriers all the time, so you're not gonna be freezing anyone anytime soon. But so disruptor ammo is great. Most of your human adversaries have shields, and disruptor ammo really helps with that. Mechs, heavy mechs have shields, like the layer of shields on top of them. They don't help against barriers, but it's still very useful. Incendiary as well. Basically, vast majority of enemies in the game have armor. Incendiary helps with armor, and then again, it helps even more with health, because they kind of go into a state of panic when they burn. So it's very good. I'm sleepy today. You also get a special skill called Adrenaline Rush, which I believe causes a slow-mo effect, which is pretty cool, but you just get a free slowdown effect if you use sniper rifles. And also on Vanguard, well, we'll talk about Vanguard later, but it's not particularly useful. You get Concussive Shot, which is basically useful against anything. Again, problem with that is that all the enemies have shields and armor, and you can only use Concussive Shot and knock enemies down if they don't have anything, but again, it's a cool, useful little extra damage ability if you need it. Okay, wow, I am sleepy today. Next one is... actually, I forgot to actually put it on a tier list. I'll place it on the A tier, because you have a very wide range of guns, and that's really your gonna be main strength. You are just so cool when you can not have to run out of cover to get extra thermal clips. It's so nice to stay behind cover and shoot shit without putting yourself in danger. Other than that, okay class. Really not much to say about them. Let's talk about Vanguard. Oh boy, so this is where it gets very interesting and very cool. Starting from Mass Effect 2, classes genuinely do become very distinct in what they do and how they play. And Vanguard is the best example of that. The game transforms if you play as Vanguard. It's unbelievable. My god, I'm so sleepy. And the reason for that is your, I think it's called warp? No, not warp, it's charge. Yeah, it's called charge. The ability called charge. It's ridiculous. It breaks the goddamn game in half. And once you properly spec, here's what the game becomes. You press charge, you dive into an enemy, they get stunned instantly, you blast them off with a shotgun. Just because you have charged into the enemy, you get 200% shields and the quick regeneration speed of your ability. After that, you take a lot of damage, you likely lose your shields. You, again, use your charge, bump into the next enemy and instantly get your 200% shields back. Kill him, again, use charge, you really start fucking pinballing around the map from enemy to enemy with unbelievable amounts of shields and shotgunning people to death. It's so active, it's so fun, and it's so efficient. You only get access to pistols, SMGs, and shotguns are gonna be your primary use, and you're not gonna be suffering for thermal clips that much because you're always in the fray of things. So you're gonna be picking them off of dead enemies a lot. It's crazy. You also get incendiary ammo. You get a couple extra abilities for biotics, but biotics are unfortunately fucking useless in Mass Effect 2 on Insanity because again, every enemy has shields and armor. you can't use biotics on enemies with shields and armor. They just get stunned for half a second and that's it. It's a waste. And considering that you have shared cooldowns, you're fucked. Just don't use any extra biotic abilities, only use charge, 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 charge. You're gonna fucking wreck. It's unbelievably fun. I highly recommend playing Mass Effect 2 with Vanguard at least once. S tier, no question. Let's talk about the next one. Adept. Adept. Mass Effect 2. It's not great. Again, going back to what I said previously, not good because again, all the enemies have shields, armor, and barriers on Insanity and Hardcore. That means your biotics are fucking useless. Once you basically get the red little indicator that your ability is ineffective against every single enemy in the game until you take off their armor or shields, and at that point they only have a health bar remaining and it's super easy to deal with anyway. Warp is the only special ability you get that has any kind of use. It's technically describing itself as being effective against armor and barriers, and it is effective against barriers, I will give it that. But then armor and shields, which are the most, common types of extra protection in the game, you're fucked. Really, the only enemies that use barriers are collectors, which are admittedly main game enemies, and the fucking, I think, Eclipse Commandos. Yeah, Eclipse Commandos, and that's it. You can't use warp on anything else efficiently. D tier, one of the worst classes you can pick, and worst of all, you get pistols and SMGs. You have to really, really, really fucking struggle for ammo. Every fight is gonna be a goddamn challenge. Seriously, do not pick biotic for Mass Effect 2. Bad choice. Infiltrator, instant S tier again. The reasons for that are very simple. Sniper rifles. You get specialized in sniper rifles, and they are fucking busted again. They absolutely shred armor. They absolutely shred anything, shields with your disruptor ammo that you get. One of the best ammo types you can get, by the way. You have AI hacking, which is not that useful, but it can help sometimes, because again, you can't use AI hacking on something that has shields. All the Geth have shields in the game on Insanity. You get Incinerate, which is very useful. You can utilize it basically on most enemies, considering a lot of enemies have armor. And most importantly, you get Tactical Cloak. It's busted. It prevents you from regenerating health or shields, but it supplements that by letting you get away out of any situation and being essentially an on-demand huge damage buff. It's fucking crazy. You should be using your cloak to the max damage possibilities, all the time. Cloak, headshot, back into cover, cloak, headshot, back into cover. It's unbelievably effective. It carried me through the whole game. It's just nuts. It makes the Insanity a breeze. All the boss fights have become easy. When you pick up the Widow sniper rifle from the collector base, that's it. You won the fucking game. You don't need anything else. Absolutely unbelievable class. One of the best picks you can have for your first playthrough. By far. Of course, assuming you can aim for heads. Which is again easy because you get the slowdown effect once you scope in with your rifle. Next up, Sentinel. A little bit more interesting in Mass Effect 2. You have a specific ability called Tech Armor. Tech Armor is interesting. It's like a permanent upgrade, I guess. Well, it's not really permanent, but it has a very long duration because you can just use it until it gets destroyed. It provides a very heavy boost to your shields, like up to 100% extra, once it gets destroyed, it like emits an energy pulse around you, which also deals damage. It has a power damage bonus if you spec into it at the last tier of the upgrade. It's very useful. You basically should always have the Sentinel armor on you, and it's quite helpful. Other than that, you get a couple biotic abilities, one of them useless, being Throw. The other one is cool, which is Warp. You also get Overload, and you also get Cryoblast. Cryoblast is useless, because again, none of the enemies just have a plain health bar and insanity. Overload and Warp are quite cool though. You can deal with both barriers and shields, leaving only armor for your teammates to deal with. And you can spec into like an Incinerate. I don't remember if you can spec into Incinerate as like a bonus ability, but you can definitely supplement it with armor piercing upgrades for your guns and your teammates using armor piercing abilities. Problem is the fact that you have no weapons training aside from pistols and SMGs. You are going to struggle for ammo again. It's a fun class. It's better than Adept because you have, you know, tech armor and overload and warp. But it's just any class without many guns is a struggle. It's really a struggle. So I would not really recommend playing a Sentinel on your first playthrough. Okay, and the last one, I don't know how Engineer got here, we gotta talk about him. Oh, and also Sentinel I would put into C tier. It's not really that useful. Engineer is the last one. It's very similar to Sentinel, except you don't have the extra armor upgrade. It's also very similar to Adept in the fact that you have quite a lot of useless abilities, and that is AI Hacking and Cryoblast. They are not useful on Insanity at all, with some small exceptions, but you do get a Combat Drone to distract enemies from yourself. You do get Incinerate, effective against armor, and you get Overload, effective against shields. You are really in the same ballpark as Sentinel, it's just a small difference of flavors. Again, because you don't have any guns training, so you're gonna be shit, you're gonna be struggling. Really, I would put them into C tier, both Sentinel and Engineer, and that would be the end of the Mass Effect 2 specific class tier list. Let's move on to Mass Effect 3, which is probably gonna be similar to 2, but with some small differences. Okay, Mass Effect 3 classes. Mass Effect 3. Let's start with, again, honorable mention, Soldier. You really start to feel the speed of the game ramping up. But here's a big difference compared to the previous games. All classes can use all the guns. So that means the abilities that you have are going to be a lot more valuable when you choose your class. Soldier technically does have the highest weight capacity. I think it's somewhere around up to plus 100, I think, which is quite good. I mean, weight capacity directly affects your ability. Problem is, you don't have much in terms of abilities to use. 3 of your abilities are ammo types. You are really struggling because you have to be the guy that switches to ammo types in the middle of a fight instead of actually fighting. You have a Fragnate, which is cool. You have Concussive Shot, also pretty cool. Again, you have Adrenaline Rush, which is not great because Vanguard has it if you specialize into it, and Sniper Rifles by default have it with the upgrades. Actually, there's a bunch of upgrades that allow you to specifically slow down time once you scope in. It's really not that great to have Adrenaline Rush. One of the first times that Soldier really falls off from grace. You get all this cool weight capacity and then you have nothing to use it on. You really don't stand out you don't get any cool armor upgrades, armor specializations, because again, any class can use any armor starting from Mass Effect 2. It's a huge fall from grace compared to Mass Effect 1, so I would put it into C tier. It can be nice to have high, fitness and sometimes maybe different ammo types for different situations, but overall, other classes just are so much better and more interesting to play as in Mass Effect 3. Speaking of interesting classes, Infiltrator, my beloved. Oh my god, Infiltrator got a massive buff in Mass Effect 3. Reasons for that are as follows. You can use Tactical Cloak with abilities. And there's a small, and I don't know if it's a feature or a bug, probably a bug, where if you shoot while using your Tactical Cloak, it technically is supposed to immediately disappear, but you get like a half-second grace period where you can use another ability. So you use your Tactical Cloak, shoot, and immediately throw out your, for example, Incinerate. You get the cooldown of Incinerate, and you basically just use 2 abilities for the cost of 1. It's crazy. You can deal out so much damage, considering the Tactical Cloak giving you extra DPS for your sniper rifles and sniper rifles themselves being busted. The potential is nuts. And you get disruptor ammo. You blast through shields, you absolutely shred them. And you get AI hacking, which has been unbelievably buffed, considering you don't have to take down shields of enemies before you have to AI hack an enemy. It's busted! It's unbelievable! You can get out of any situation, you can deal with any situation, you have a lot of DPS. It's nuts. It's unbelievable. I should absolutely recommend picking Infiltrator. And also, you get the second highest, well, not second highest, well, technically second highest weight capacity under Soldier, along with Sentinel and Vanguard. So you can even recharge your abilities fast if you spec into the right stuff. It's unbelievable. Very fun class. Very, very fun class to play. And speaking of fun classes, Vanguard, my beloved, you are back. Again, you get your crazy ass charge, which is gonna be your bread and butter. Except you also get a second ability, which helps with your charge. And that is Nova. The use of it is debatable, but it's cool to have an option. It basically explodes your shield into like a huge explosion. Sorry, that's my alarm clock. It basically explodes your shields into a massive explosion, and you can really ramp it up, but again, you sacrifice a lot. Here's the catch. I think the last rank you get a 25% chance of not using your barrier at all. That sounds crazy, and it is fucking crazy. Basically, every like 4 times you use the charge, you're gonna have a free huge explosion. On top of the fact that you insta-regenerate your barriers when you charge. It's nuts. Vanguard is such a fun class starting in Mass Effect 2 due to this biotic charge. And again, with the combat being so fast-paced in the third game, you just go crazy. It's the fastest gameplay Mass Effect can provide in the entire franchise. Everything is so quick, you have to make decisions in a split second. Basically all your abilities complement your playstyle except for pull. It's unbelievable. Very, very fun class. Highly recommend. Very efficient in basically all situations. Again, thanks to the ping-ponging that you can do through insta-recharging your shields every time you charge. And with the super fast cooldowns of Mass Effect 3, it ramps up even further. Okay, that was Vanguard. Only 3 classes left to go. let's talk about Adept. Adept is it's better because they've done away with the whole all enemies have armor, all enemies have shields shtick. So you do have a lot more going on for you. Singularity is quite a good ability again. Warp is quite useful. Pull is kinda shit. Throw is nice. Shockwave is kinda shit. You have low weight capacity, so you really can't even like it's interesting because you're a class specializing in using your abilities as much as possible, and then you can't use them as much unless you gimp yourself on guns, and then again you turn into the Mass Effect 2 Shepard, where you have no guns, no ammo, and you're forced to try and throw your abilities against enemies that a lot of the time will have shields or armor. Not all the time. The situation's a bit better in that department, and at least you can technically equip yourself with all the guns if you feel like you're completely outclassed, but you're gonna be basically waiting for your abilities to cool down all the time. So I would not recommend Adept. I think it's worse than Soldier overall, because again you are just going to be waiting for cooldowns all the time. You don't have the ammo types at all, which again doesn't let you deal with situations as much as you can do with Soldier. Not a great class, really a huge fall from grace compared to Mass Effect 1. But it's understandable considering just how busted it was in 1. Next up, Engineer. The Engineer is Engie here. It's interesting. Very, very interesting. Because you get a sentry turret. You get your own sentry turret. It's so cool. It's so nice. It's such a cool little thing. There's a lot of enemies that just completely ignore your turret and it can just blast through shit. You can really spec into it, make it very, very efficient. There's so much to the sentry gun by itself. It's seriously crazy. It's very, very fun. It puts Engineer into its own special category, considering especially you have combat drone for distractions as well. AI hacking has been significantly buffed when I talked about it with Infiltrator, where you actually don't have to take down the shields of the enemies to hack them. It's so fun. It's so much more fun to play as Engineer than in Mass Effect 2. That alone deserves a bump, I think. A tier at the very least. Again, you don't have much in terms of weight capacity, so that's gonna gimp you a little bit considering how much you use the abilities that you have, but the abilities themselves definitely compensate with how fun they are. And also, as you may know or may not know, Engineer is the singular class in the entire franchise, in specifically Mass Effect 3 the Omega DLC, that has a unique Renegade or a Paragon interrupt, specifically if you only have the Engineer class. And that's, I believe, something has to do with like power on Omega, where you can both save people and like disable a bomb or something like that. It's very cool that you really shove it to the main villain by just being a nerd. It's very, very cool. Engineer is a very cool class in Mass Effect 3. I would put it into A tier because I think Infiltrator and Soldier are just so fun and efficient at what they do. But Engineer is still a very, very cool class. Alright, next up, let's talk about the last one, Sentinel. Sentinel definitely got a bit of a buff compared to 2. You still have your tech armor, but you also have both Overload and Warp, again from Mass Effect 2, which allows you to deal with shields and armor easily. You have Throw, which again is nice for like husks and wherever, for the smaller enemies. Generally Reaper enemies don't have much shields. Basic Cerberus fucks don't have much shields, so you can really throw them around. It's an okay class. It doesn't really have much going on. Really, tech armor is the only thing you have going for you compared to the other classes. And again, it explodes once it goes down completely. It's okay. It's not really great. You technically have a power bonus, power damage bonus if you have it equipped and installed. So you know it's not super interesting compared to the other classes. I would put it into B tier because you have more tools than soldier, but it's not really as interesting as engineer or all the other classes in the game. So it really depends on the situation. It's quite situational. Not really recommended for a first playthrough. I would recommend picking Infiltrator, Vanguard, or Engineer as a first pick. Other than that, though, that's about it for the tier list. That was a little bit of experiment for me. See if I enjoy doing this kind of stuff. And I hope if you watched this, you also enjoyed it. Found something interesting for yourself. I'm also gonna be doing a squad mate tier list right after this. As you may have seen, I have a little tab open with all the squad mates ready to go. But other than that, that's about it for this tier list, and I'll see you in the next one.